Shabbat Shalom. One more hostage remains in Gaza. For over 2 years, Israel has waged a campaign with two objectives. First, to destroy Hamas, the terror organization that attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023, killing over 1,200 Israeli citizens and others. And second, to secure the return of the hostages, the living and the slain. 251 people ripped from their homes that day. 168 have since been released, liberated through negotiation, ceasefires, prisoner exchanges, and in a few cases, military rescue operations. The remaining, those murdered, their remains have been repatriated to their loved ones in Israel or their respective countries of origin. With this week's identification and return of Thai national Sudisak Rintalak, there remains one final hostage, Ron Givley, killed and abducted on October 7th. His family, his country, his people, nearly 800 days of anguish, uncertainty, and heartache. Now is not the time to take our eye off the ball. This ceasefire is tenuous at best. Israel must muster the combination of determination and restraint to see this moment through, to ensure that Givley is laid to rest in the embrace of his people. The toll of this war has been devastating for our Israeli brothers and sisters, yes, but also for Gaza's civilian population. Tens of thousands killed, nearly 2 million internally displaced, hospitals and homes reduced to rubble, and an already shattered region now literally and figuratively flattened. The page must turn, and one of the surest ways to turn it is to close this long and bitter hostage chapter once and for all. But it's not just for Givley or Rintalak that I speak of the hostages this morning. I do so because despite this fragile ceasefire, another battle yet rages, not with Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis, but hearts and minds. In the West, the global community, the media, campuses, and right here in our own New York community. We know of the chance of genocide outside a neighboring synagogue. You read of the violent security breach in the Jewish community of my hometown of Los Angeles this past week. Just the other night, I attended a fundraiser for a do-gooding Jewish organization devoted to alleviating hunger and food instability in New York. Anti-Israel, genocide-chanting protesters at the door, at the ready. We are still waiting for Givley's return, but the revisionist history of this conflict is well on its way. It's a rewriting, dangerous, not just for its distortions of the past, but in how it seeks to shape the future. A disingenuous tool for policy and persuasion. Opinion pieces in major outlets, penned by otherwise respected voices, laying the sufferings of Gaza entirely at Israel's feet, and on that basis, calling for strategic realignments, seemingly forgetting how this war began in the first place and why it continued, glancing mention, if any, to the undeniable and unbearable plight of the hostages. As every Hebrew school student knows, whoever saves a single life, it's as if they've saved an entire universe. As Maimonides taught, there is no greater mitzvah than the redeeming of captives, be it 251 or just one. In this Orwellian moment, unmoored from its moral bearings, when wrong is recast as right, victim as aggressor, when Israel was called on to fight a war it did not start, under constraints its enemy never respected, all the while trying to rescue those taken from their homes and then accused of war crimes and genocide for doing so, we need to hold the line. Against those who stand outside our tent, we need to hold the line. And for all those within the tent, we need to widen it. Because, convinced as I am of the justness of Israel's cause, I also believe that there exists a range of voices, both within Israel and among committed American Jews, worthy of a hearing. We need to see this war from every vantage point, finding language capacious enough to hold multiple views at once: the desperate and just cause of securing the release of the hostages, and an empathy-filled response to the horrific sufferings of Gaza. To know that if every hostage's life is of infinite worth, so too is every Palestinian child. To respect Israel's sovereign right to secure the safety of its citizenry, and to recognize that Israel's choices do not remain confined to its borders. To understand that while we champion the hostage-freeing mission of the IDF, that support does not come with a moral blank check. That support need not extend to the policies of an Israeli government before, during, or after October 7th. I have long since given up on the expectation of receiving a Christmas card from the Israeli Prime Minister. To free the hostages, that part is not complicated. How we went about and go about doing so and where we go from here, that's a conversation we can have and must have. Reasonable people, equally devoted to the safety of the people and the state of Israel, can and will disagree. What we need is language rooted in Jewish tradition, an ethical precedent, if you will, to study on how far one may go and how far one must not go to save a life and bring a hostage home. And as good a place as any to begin, not surprisingly, is this week's Torah reading. Genesis 34, the harrowing story of the rape, abduction, and liberation of Jacob's only daughter, Dinah. It's not a pleasant tale, hardly the stuff of Hebrew school curricula or B'nai Mitzvah speeches. A trigger warning would not be out of place. The tale begins with Dinah, who, growing up in a household of all boys, goes out to see the women of the land. By the second verse, though, through a rapid succession of verbs, Dinah is taken, raped, and disgraced by Shechem, son of Hamor. And while much ink, modern, medieval, has been spilled on the nature of their relationship, the biblical text, to be clear, never signals her consent, nor, for that matter, grants her a single word. Dinah never speaks, essentially disappearing after the third verse, held within the confines of her assailant's house. Her father, Jacob, hears of his daughter's violation and abduction, and, with his sons away in the field, does nothing, awaiting their return. The passivity of Jacob is chilling. The entire family dynamic mirrors and foreshadows what will soon unfold with the degradation of Joseph in next week's Torah reading. When the brothers do return home to hear the news, they're seized with fury. An outrage has been committed in Israel, a thing not to be done. Was it Dinah's lack of consent that enraged them, their own lack of consultation, or the blow to the family honor? The text leaves it open to interpretation. What we do know is that their fury runs hot and is ready to boil over. Negotiations begin. An offer is made by Shechem's father, Hamor. Let us dwell together. Our daughters will marry your sons, and your daughters will marry our sons. Name your bride price, and it shall be paid. We never actually learn how Jacob would have responded to the offer, because before he can speak, the brothers act with deceit. They demand that every male of Shechem's town be circumcised. Hamor's men agree, and the story darkens even further. On the third day, as the townspeople are in pain recovering, two of Jacob's sons, Shimon and Levi, take to the swords. They kill Shechem and Hamor, going on to slaughter all the men and plunder the town that had defiled their sister. Dinah is brought back home. Not only are the guilty punished, but an entire community is destroyed, a rage-filled, full-scale, punitive war that could not be avenged. And while our violent tale ends there, it's here that the moral reckoning begins. Because when the brothers return home, Dinah in hand, they are met not with gratitude, but with rebuke. Jacob reproaches his sons. "You have made me hated," he says, "among the inhabitants of the land. I am but few in number, and should the tribes unite against me, they will attack, and I will be destroyed." Jacob's concern, as ever, is reputational and pragmatic. In this story, as in those before it, he's always preferred to maneuver, negotiate, and accommodate. All of which is why it's so important to note that it's not Jacob, but the brothers who have the final word in the story, or more precisely, the final question. The chapter closes with the brothers' searing retort to their father, "Shall our sister be treated like a whore?" For the brothers, only retributive justice will do. Eye for an eye, life for a life. Shechem's crime must be avenged tenfold. And while at first it seems that their fierce action, rather than Jacob's inaction, commands our sympathy, the moral judgments don't end there. It echoes and will reverberate forward. Shimon, the same brother who wielded the sword to free his sister, is later imprisoned by Joseph, his brother, in Egypt, a touch, if you will, of biblical karma. And in the twilight of Jacob's life, when he gathers his sons for a blessing, Shimon and Levi receive not blessing, but rebuke, condemned as tools of violence. Yet paradoxically, Levi's line is elevated, the tribe of priests from whom Moses, our greatest leader, will emerge. I could continue the back and forth, and I think that's precisely the point. The back and forth is the point. As my late teacher, Tikva Frimer-Kensky, taught, Jacob and his sons represent two competing strategies of survival, accommodation and deterrence. Jacob counsels prudence and compromise. Israel is small, few in number, surrounded by those who would seek to destroy her, and world opinion, it matters. The brothers, they see things totally differently. Moral outrage leaves no room for restraint. The only language understood by those who would do us harm is to do them harm. The life of our kin takes precedence over all other considerations, and it's not a close call. Neither choice is without peril. If too militant, Israel courts moral compromise and isolation. If too accommodating, Israel courts vulnerability and destruction. The back and forth of the Bible, Jacob and his sons, these are the biblical boundaries to the conversation. To the questions of who is right and who is wrong, the Bible never actually says. It's left to us, every reader, to decide. And as with the Israel of old, so too with the Israel of today. Again, setting aside those who seek our harm, there are those within our own camp who mistakenly see everything in black and white. Either, as some would argue in the spirit of Jacob's sons, that Israel can do no wrong, that in the face of the plight of the hostages and the hatreds of Hamas, every action is justified. There are no innocents, and civilian casualties are the unfortunate and necessary cost of war. And then there are those who would deny Israel's right to defend itself, to wage a war against her enemies, liberate her hostages, secure her borders, and preserve her legitimacy, thus rewarding an enemy that hides behind civilians, hospitals, and dense urban terrain. As urban warfare expert John Spencer has noted, any democratic nation, including our own, would have responded to an assault like October 7th with immediate and overwhelming military force to achieve its aims as swiftly as possible. To hold Israel to a double standard, to label every act of defense a war crime or worse, says far more about the critic than it does about Israel itself. A double standard revealing less about Israel's conduct than about the moral blind spots of those who would condemn her. So which is it? Israel always right or Israel always wrong? As with the biblical text, my job is not to tell you how to think. only to counsel you how to have the conversation. Recognize the continuum, engage in the debate, and resist the urge to paint those with whom you disagree as traitorous to either our people or some ethical standard that is unachievable anytime, all the more so in times of war. Conditions when snap decisions must be made by young men and women fighting for their lives to save lives in circumstances unimaginable to us in the comfort of our lives. All of which brings me to my final point, and really my main point. It seems to me that when we are having these community conversations, we need to keep two things in mind. We must, of course, have the sufferings of Gaza ever present. And we should also have them always as if an IDF soldier was sitting in our presence. We should do so to disabuse ourselves of the illusion that the Middle East and the Upper East Side play by the same rules. No statement, to channel Fackenheim, should be made that would not be credible in the presence of an IDF soldier who has risked life and limb fighting a merciless enemy, defending his own life and that of his fellow soldiers, all the while in pursuit of liberating his captive kin. And while this is a mental, moral exercise we should undertake every day in the abstract, today it can be done in real time, in the presence of one such young man who has lived through it. Yonatan, my dear nephew, you have served in the IDF with distinction these past 2 years as a platoon tank commander in Gaza. And I want you to know, and I think I speak for so many in this community, how deeply proud, how deeply grateful, and how deeply moved we are by you. You have been thrust into unimaginable circumstances. You have fought for the Jewish people and the Jewish state, and you and your comrades have prevailed. You stand tall, we have your back, and we couldn't be prouder. Not only are you alive, which we're all really happy about, but your soul is intact, changed by what you've lived through, yet unmistakably, beautifully you. So as you travel the world in a well-earned, globe-trotting, post-army backpacking trip, and the haters will surely hate, carry with you the confidence that your moral core is solid, and that your family, both biological and global Jewish, loves you. This is, as our Torah teaching teaches, what it means to be Israel, to wrestle and to prevail. Yonatan, that is what you've done. You've lived up to the highest calling of our people's name, and may we, the children of Israel, rise to the calling of ours. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining the Park Avenue Synagogue family. I hope you enjoyed the sermon. Please consider supporting our online community by scanning the QR code or by going to supportpas.org or by making a donation. Shalom and see you in Shul.